When we were kids, we lived on a farm. And I remember back in the 80s, there was this program on television where this woman had made a sheep her pet in her house. And the sheep would go around the house and sit on the couch. And, they were talking about, oh, isn't it wonderful that we have this pet sheep? Anyway, us kids thought that we could have a pet sheep as well. Because, whenever it's on the television, it has to be true. There's a golden rule in farming. Livestock are not pets. And when my father saw that, however we did it, that we had this pet lamb called Charlie, when my father saw it, he wasn't having anything of this. And one day we came home from school and pet Charlie, the lamb, had been taken to the mart to be sold and turned into lamb chops. We were completely devastated. Completely devastated that this poor little pet lamb that we love so much had been taken by our father and sent to the mart. A mart in Ireland, if anyone doesn't know what it is a place where all livestock is brought. They put them into like a rodeo pen and people bid on them and they buy them, and that's how you sell livestock in Ireland. Well, we did in the 80s. Anyway, this particular lamb was so tame. He arrived to the mart in Meath. Don't know which one was it, Kells or someplace. And sat down. And of course, none of the farmers were going to buy a lamb that seems to be sick for whatever reason. So Charlie the lamb came back to our house, and there was cheers and celebrations in our house that evening that our pet lamb had been saved from slaughter, had been saved from being turned into lamb chops. And so Charlie continued to be our pet lamb, exactly as we saw on that famous TV program, because everything on TV has to be true. The media, they're experts at selling us the truth. Anyway, Charlie grew and grew and grew and got bigger and bigger. We used to like playing with him. And one of the things we used to play with him, we used to hold out our hands like this. And Charlie would like butt us with his head. Like, give us a little butt, we'd play, and he'd bush stuff. If we threw a ball, he'd bush it at us, okay? So Charlie got bigger and bigger and bigger. And before we knew it, Charlie the lamb turned into Charlie the ram. And everyone can understand a ram, what a ram is. Anyway, one day my mother went out to put clothes on the line, and Charlie, our little pet ram, saw my mother, charged at her, and nearly killed her. And within the space of 2 hours, Charlie the ram was no more. He was turned into ram chops. And we all learnt the hard lesson in life that once you go against nature, once you go against the laws of nature, what nature has been telling us for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, once you go against those laws, you can start along the path perfectly fine against nature. And look, I know better. Hello, we know better as kids. We knew better than our father. My father should have known better than to let us be so stupid, but I suppose he, for whatever reason, he played along with it. And maybe my mother said, oh, look, sure, let them have their little pet lamb. But, it starts off fine. Nobody got killed. It was all fine. We all had little Charlie, and we all had the pet lamb and the pet. And, he got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then nature took its course, because rams will do what rams do. They ram. And they rammed my mother. That anecdote is actually did happen. That's something I will always remember. You learn the hard way the laws of life. You learn the hard way the laws of heaven. Okay? Now, in this synodal document, it talks about the LGBTQI community. And there's many friends of mine who would apply that label to themselves. They are dear friends of mine. And there are other friends of mine who will say to me, Robert, you don't know the destructive nature of that movement has had in my life. And what happens in that movement sometimes, and I'm not making generalizations, is that the illusion, the mirage of the, two men in a perfect relationship and with their two adoptive kids is held up there as an example. This is what you can have if you find the right person, okay? But what they don't tell you about are the men that goes through a constant cycle of, multiple partners, looking for this mirage of love that's been held up there. You can have this, for for as many there are 20 or 30 men that have their life destroyed compared to this mirage held up there that you can have this perfect relationship. Because at the end of the day, our sexuality is meant to sacrifice. There's pleasure there, but it's also meant for a reason. There is a finality, there is a law there, and to put it very crudely, as I come from a farming background, you don't place things where they shouldn't be placed. People will understand what I'm saying. You don't use things for what they shouldn't be used for. Sheep are not pets. You don't use them as pets. And you can start off and be perfectly fine and nothing will happen. But the laws of nature will work against you. And I'm not here trying to hate anybody. I'm not here trying to if you know what I mean. I'm trying to show people there's truths in our faith. Catholicism isn't a set of rules. It's a set of signposts on the way to heaven. There's signposts here, okay? Same as in farming, you have a set of rules and guidelines. Don't do this. And nobody says, farming is a set of rules and stuff like this. No, I mean, if you do stupid things in farming, you get injured. You get injured. If you don't maintain your equipment correctly, it'll fail you. If you use livestock for what they're not supposed to be used for, they will hurt you. And it's the same in life. Catholicism isn't a set of rules. It's a set of guides, signposts. Maybe it's good to treat a woman with respect. Maybe it's good not to use her for a one-night stand. Maybe that woman has a heart that you have to look after and care for. Maybe you have to help that woman as a husband. Do you know what I mean? Maybe women are not there for our satisfaction to be masturbated against on a pornography movie or something like that. Maybe that's not what we're supposed to be doing with women. Maybe there's wisdom in what Catholicism has to offer us. Maybe there is. And it's something called a spiritual path. It's a sad in Catholicism, there used to be something called discipleship where you would be taught this spiritual path of how to arrive to God, how to encounter God. People have the Catholic Church, sadly, seems to have lost it in this moment in time, in rejecting age-old spiritual practices and truths which help people avoid the dangers in life. Do you know what I mean? We can look around. In this moment in time in our society, we have a pandemic of monkeypox. Wouldn't it be good to say, okay, maybe it's time now, guys, don't be sleeping around, maintain your distance, stop the spread. Do you know what I mean? This is what they told us during COVID-19. Could we not apply the same logic? Why isn't this logic not being able to be... It's sensible scientific logic. But sadly, in today's world, we seem to have lost the run of ourselves. And again, I'm not anti anything. If you want to live your life the way you want to live it, and I've said this to many of my friends who are gay, I've said to them, if that's the way you want, that's the way you live your life. I'm not going to go around criticizing you or doing anything. I'm just saying, that's fine, you follow that way. There is a Christian way which maybe has some wisdom that could help you in your life. And people have said this after their relationships have failed, after the problems they've had, after the STIs that they've encountered in their life, after their broken relationships. They understand sometimes that maybe there was wisdom in our Catholic faith. Maybe. Catholicism isn't a set of rules and regulations. those are guidelines, signposts. Like in farming, there are rules and regulations, but we understand what they're there for. And if you go against them, nature comes back to you. Nature comes back with a vengeance sometimes. It's like sometimes I see people going to zoos, and if people haven't been around animals, so they don't understand animals. I've often seen people that will go up to a dog, try to pet the dog, and you don't know anything about that animal. It's not your dog. You don't know anything. We were walking in Spain, and there was this man there. He had his dog in a leash, and I saw a child walking past the dog, and bending down to touch the dog, and the dog ran for her to try and bite the arm off this child, and the man pulling the dog back. And sometimes we think, oh, nice cuddly animals. Animals are animals. Nature is nature, and sometimes nature will bite you. That is the nature of reality sometimes. When we don't understand the order of things in this world, the order of things not in this world, and the order of things in the spiritual world. There is a spiritual battle whether people understand it or not. And what we have to sell as Catholics is a way that is not popular and will never, ever be popular. Whether we like it or not, the way that Christ was offering us will never be accepted or be popular, no matter how many flags we fly, no matter how many women we ordain. It will become empty and irrelevant if we follow what the world wants us to follow. And the Irish Catholic Church does not understand what they are playing with, the fire they are playing with, because they're not able to teach the spiritual path that has been handed down generation to generation to generation to us. There is wisdom in chastity. In the spiritual life, and it took me many years to understand this, and thankfully there's the writer Valentin Tomberg, he talks about it. In the spiritual life, poverty, chastity and obedience play a massive part. Now, chastity, when I'm saying here, chastity in your state of life. If you're a priest, if you're a married man, chastity plays a role. So, for example, when a man gets married to a woman at the altar, and I plan to be faithful to that woman until she dies or until he dies, you're called to chastity in that marriage. And if the day afterwards your wife remains paralyzed and is not able to have sex with you, you're still called to chastity. You're not going to go out and divorce her and look for another woman to please you. If you're entering marriage just to be pleased and not understanding the call to sacrifice, because Catholicism is a higher calling. It's a higher spiritual calling that people realize. And this is the sad reality that we're not able to bring people to the heights of Catholicism, to enter into heaven and understand the heights of Catholicism. When I was initially last year on the mountain, as I've said in other podcasts, and that nun appeared to me. So in Italy last year, walking in the mountains, after visiting the convent of Sister Anna Maria Canopy, she's dead now, walking the mountains, but she appeared to me, sat down beside me and showed me God the Father. Guarda il tuo Dio che ti ama così tanto. Look at your God who loves you so much. It's like heaven is screaming at us sometimes. These people, these beings, these saints. Anna Maria Canopy. These people that are up there at heaven with ropes dangling down from heaven. Ropes that come down to us and say, come on up here, guys. Look at what we have seen. Look at what awaits you. Don't live your life destroyed with drugs, with sex, with porn, with masturbation, with all of these things which will consume you slowly into this world. Crystallizes you into this world. Draws your gaze away from God. Catholicism isn't a set of rules and dogmas that is a straitjacket that restricts your freedom. No, it's those guidelines, those signposts are telling you don't walk that road. Because look at all of these people when they walk down there, what they have encountered. Don't walk here. Look at the beauty of this. Is what we have to teach a whole generation. This spiritual path, this spiritual battle, what the saints in heaven, what Christ and Our Lady are. It's like heaven is at the moment. It's just ready to burst on us, with so much grace, with so much immensity. If you encountered God, you would live differently. You would look at life differently. You would just see the whole world. This world just looks completely different when you look at it with the eyes of faith. And sometimes I can be very pessimistic and to see what's going on. I'm sad. I'm sad in a way because I see priests and bishops who probably have never encountered him. I never had a mystical experience. Never even. I mean, I know spiritual directors say don't go looking for mystical experiences. But you can read about them. You can read St. John of the Cross. The other day, what was the book? I was just reading The Silence of the Cross. This is what Edith Stein was asked to prepare when she went to the Netherlands, because her superiors knew the threat she was under, and to take her mind off what was coming for her. They asked her to write about St. John of the Cross, about Carmelite mysticism. Can you imagine her preparation for heaven was reading the greatest mystical experiences that can be understood? That was Edith Stein. Can you imagine her going to that gas chamber and what she was holding in her heart? The saints that were there beside her as she died. She speaks to us from beyond the grave today. She speaks to us. These saints speak to us. They're kind of driving us forward. The passion that they have as saints. People think that they're silent and that they have nothing to offer this world. These saints speak to us from beyond the grave of heaven. They speak to us. If people could only see the beauty of the Catholic faith. I know the Holy Spirit is working in Ireland. I have seen him working in Ireland. It's quite amazing. It's quite amazing. There's a priest in Ireland that he's charismatic, and many people will know him. And he does a ministry of healing. And one day he just prayed over me, and I said, "Okay, Lord, Holy Spirit, if you have something to say through this minister, through this priest, let it come." Father Brendan, people will know him. And it's like a ton of bricks comes down at you. It's like, you want a little bit of the Holy Spirit. Are you ready for this? Because, you be careful what you... And, the Holy Spirit, once he sees a soul that wants to work with him, will start. I wish I could have seen this 30 years ago. I wish somebody had told me about the treasure that the Catholic faith has. The absolute beautiful treasure that the Catholic faith has. If only people had... And don't be afraid to be saints, to be mystics. Don't be afraid of heaven. Don't be afraid of those beyond the grave. The saints beyond the grave. That are calling you, that are holding a rope from heaven for us. Don't be afraid of them. In times of like these, they're more active than ever. They simply are. They transform people. We can go against nature all we like. We can go against the laws of nature all we like. We can go to the zoo and pet the lion, and maybe he mightn't bite your hand off that day, and you think, oh, that's a nice scenario, and look, I'll bring my child the next time and we'll pet the lion. But sometimes the lion will bite your hand off, or the dog will bite your hand off that you don't know. Nature has laws. The spiritual world has laws. You can go against these laws and you might be fine for a while, but sooner or later, these laws have consequences. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Whether we know it or not, you can turn away from God. You can live your life and die without God. You don't need him. You can do that. You exist. And for the very reason that you as a human being exist, you have free will. Existence and free will is one thing. God didn't create us and then make us free. The very act of creating us was an act of creating was that we were created in the likeness and image of God. And that the likeness and image of God is our existence. We are like God in the sense that we have free will. It's something so powerful that people don't understand. And I'm giving this message as a message of hope. I'm not hating anybody. I don't hate anybody. I want you to encounter what's true, good and beautiful, not the mirage that the world sometimes offers of what is true, good and beautiful. Because a mirage is real, but it's not true. Do you know what I mean? There's an immensity, there's an ocean that you don't realize. And in different times, God calls different people to give a message. God bless. Take care. Bye bye.